Welcome back to the Female Founder World podcast. It's Jasmine. I am the host of the show and the creator of the Female Founder World universe. It is so great to be back. Today I'm in Sydney. I am chatting with an incredible founder here who also spoke at our event in Sydney last night. Her name's Rachael Wilde and she is the founder of TBH Skincare and York Street Brands. She is one of those really just impressive beauty entrepreneurs. She hit $4,000 worth of sales on her very first day, and the business has only been around a few years. They're already stocked in some of the biggest stores in Australia. They did $800,000 worth of sales in the first 18 months. And honestly, I'm just so impressed by how she's building this business. So I had to get her in to speak IRL and learn all about how she's doing it. Rach, welcome to the show.
You are now entering Female Founder World with your host, Jasmine Garnsworthy.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start right at the beginning. Where did the idea for TBH come from? And you guys are focused on acne skincare. You're not the first brand to do it, but you've been able to get so much traction so quickly. What's different?
Yeah. So I never planned on creating a business. I all came from my previous experience, which was actually in the medical devices industry. So working in that industry, I came across a technology that was patented, being used in the hospital space to treat infections. And essentially the medical research and development company who created that found out that it had an application in skincare, specifically within acne. So in terms of I guess the category and the product and everything, it was something that was completely new. Unlike anything else on the market, it's not a benzoyl peroxide product or a salicylic acid product or anything like that. So finding out about the technology excited me, but mainly because I was someone who'd had a really long personal experience with acne. So I always felt like the acne category was quite clinical and dry and unemotive and just not very caring for the actual customer. And having known what it was like to experience really severe acne, I think that was something that I was really passionate about. So it was like these two worlds collided where I found this really cool technology, but then I was really passionate about the cause that, essentially that product could have such a big impact in someone's life. And I have a background in marketing, so the idea of being able to build a brand like this from scratch was just really exciting to me. So long story short, at the age of 23, I actually pitched for the licensing rights to that product.
Wow.
And then was lucky enough to win them and launched that hero product, which we still have to this day, that is patented. I launched that to market within 6 months of sort of winning those rights.
How do you know how to do that when you're 23? I think that when I was 23, if I had seen something like that, I would have been like, oh, that's a cool idea. But I don't think I would have known how to do it.
Yeah. I don't think I knew how to do it either. I think you just stumble forward and figure it out. I think obviously I had been privy to how, what the model was, I guess, in that industry of how they worked and, people could license technology. I guess I was aware that that was a possibility. And then really, I was lucky enough to be connected to that CEO via a mutual family connection. And so I actually ended up in a meeting with the CEO and was able to pitch for what I would do with a product like that. And I was really lucky to co-found it with someone who has complementary skill sets to what I do, also doubles as my mum, which is a very interesting, obviously, dynamic when you go into business. But I think she's an accountant and analyst sort of by trade, and so on the numbers and operational side of things was really helpful. And I was obviously the other side of the brain, which was marketing and all the creative brand building and stuff. But neither of us had ever built a business before. Neither of us had ever worked in retail, ever in beauty, nothing. We were so green. So it was really, it was quite scary. I think we were just very ambitious to start out, and I was very naive, which I actually think really helped me at the beginning.
I love that you started this with your mum. I think that there's so much trust you need to have when you're starting a business with someone, and who are you going to trust more than your own mum?
Yes. In saying that, I think I completely agree. As you have that close relationship, which I think, because it's really tough to start a business, that I think it's amazing to have a close relationship, but also when you have a personal relationship and then you go into business with someone, it just changes the dynamic so much. And to navigate, okay, what's work and what's personal was really difficult. But, I'm so glad we've done it and we've come so far from back then when it was just the two of us.
Yeah, you really have. I want to still talk about the launch. We'll get to all the traction and amazing things you've done recently in a sec, but You had a $4,000 launch day, which just isn't something that people just do. Like that's actually very, very hard to do. And we were talking last night at our like Female Founder World pop-up event in Bondi, and you know, you've obviously done so much since then that I think you kind of can easily just forget that that is such a great milestone.
Yeah.
And I really want to dig into what it was that you were doing pre-launch that when you dropped this product, you were able to sell through so much.
Yeah, I think if you have the ability to create demand prior to launching a product, is the smartest thing you can do, because then you sort of have the demand before you have the stock. And if I was doing anything again, I would definitely almost like ramp that up as much as I could. It was all very organic for TBH in the early days. So it was literally me creating an Instagram page and then driving people to that Instagram page to educate them, bring them behind the scenes on like what was going on and what I was like creating. And each step of the way I was like, you know, sharing little updates. So organic. Obviously I felt so awkward like getting on camera. I remember those days. It's so foreign to me now because I am so used to it. But like I recall feeling like very self-conscious about getting on camera, but that's all it was. And the page didn't have like thousands of followers. We had maybe like 800 followers that, you know, when we launched, it wasn't big. But I think organically connecting with people and then obviously having that really core like brand purpose where I had a personal, like, you know, I could personally relate to the problem and sharing how important it was to me personally on that page. It just made a lot of sense for me to be doing that, but also terrifying at the start because, you know, it's like a small Instagram page and just a gal with a dream. And
This is 2020, right?
2020.
Were you on TikTok in the beginning?
No. I literally downloaded TikTok after I started the business. And TikTok's only really been a platform that has come about more for us now. But if I was launching a business now, it wouldn't have been Instagram that I started with. It would be TikTok. And I think TikTok's such a powerful tool for finding a community and like building a business and a community online. Like I think it's way more powerful actually than Instagram.
Totally. How were you funding this in the beginning?
I did a small private round with family and friends. So obviously myself and mum poured in a lot of money that we could to setting it up, and then we raised the rest with family and friends. The total was about $250,000 that we raised to get us going in a product-based business. Heaps of that went to stock. And then we also were able to essentially budget quite well for marketing for like a brand new, you know, startup business. And so we were able to get some runs on the board early on with like ambassadors and things like that. And we, you know, turned on meta ads, and I was doing all the Facebook buying and ad creation and content creation and everything back in the day.
Did you learn how to do that, or did you know it all from previous?
I had
jobs?
a little bit of like previous knowledge and insight, but very like not on the tools whatsoever. Like it was just some insight. So then I ended up doing a masterclass actually in Facebook ad buying.
Oh, where did you do that?
Founder, actually. I did
yeah?
the founder masterclass and went through, like, there was a few things in that masterclass, but I think I mainly just did like the Facebook ad buying stuff. And that gave me a really good foundation. And then I think from there, I sort of upskilled as I went, just, you know, here and there, talking to people, reading certain things.
I love when people can give me like a tactical thing to go and do. And it's not just like, oh, I just like organically picked it up as the business built. It's like, no, go tell me the exact resources that you had and what you read and what you did. Okay, that's really cool to hear. I'm very curious about this licensing thing. So if you find a patented piece of technology, do you buy the license? Is it like an arrangement where it's like they own part of the business? Like, I don't know how much you can speak to that, but I am curious.
The way that we set it up was basically like we purchased product almost from them.
Yeah.
So that's more along the lines of like a distribution agreement, and then but now we license it. So essentially, it's like we pay royalties on any of the products that contain the patented technology in them.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, so moving forward a little bit, you are now in 402 Priceline stores, which is one of Australia's largest retailers. For the most of our community are in the US, so I would probably compare that to like a CVS or something, maybe a little bit more beauty focused. And you're also in more than 800 Coles supermarkets. So there are two big supermarkets in Australia. Coles is one of them, and you're there as well. Yes. How did those partnerships come about? That is just such a dream for people who are building consumer brands?
Oh, yeah. So we were pure play online e-commerce for the first 3 years. Some of that worked really well in our favour because we were going through COVID, and so there was no really retail presence at all during COVID. But I think for us, it was really important for us to expand to retail and that physical store presence so that we could introduce people to the brand, you know, in person. I think for brand awareness, it's quite important, and just establishing the brand in the category, it's important. But I was really glad that we had the 3 years actually under our belt before we did that. So I reached out to Priceline because they're a pharmacy but also a beauty destination. So when it came to sort of identifying a retailer, Priceline was really, I think, one that we loved because it has that pharmacy element but also it's a beauty destination. So being an acne product, it was like, okay, they've got a healthcare professional in store, but they've also got this really beautiful like beauty destination feel to them. And it was an accessible buying experience. So we could have gone into, you know, like we're looking at, okay, do we want to be Mecca, Sephora, those kind of destinations? But when you're experiencing acne, your confidence is like really challenged. And I think when you're going to shop for a product and find a solution, you don't want to walk into an environment where you potentially feel like intimidated or overwhelmed. So the process for that was really going and pitching to, you know, like we had to reach out to them somehow, you know, being Priceline being the one that we wanted to work with. So I actually ended up getting an email of one of the buyers and like found them on LinkedIn and stuff. So I started reaching out, but it wasn't like a really quick process at all. It was actually really hard. And I think because I didn't have any retail experience, I didn't even realize that the range reviews for like the skincare category only happen like twice a year. So there's only going to be like 2 short periods in the year where the buyers are even looking at new brands to potentially like entertain bringing them into store. But when you're reaching out to them, like I didn't know the timings of that. Maybe I was reaching out and then like, okay, I wouldn't get a reply after like 3 months. I'm like, damn, like, you know. And so it felt like this really long process, even though maybe if I'd been a bit more clued in as to when the range reviews were happening, it would have been like easier to understand.
Right. It's like actually the system is designed that they don't respond to your email for most of the year.
Yes, literally. So I wish I had known that, but I think so what ended up happening was I hounded, sort of didn't get replies for a long time. Then I actually found a connection who could intro me to one of the buyers, and so they ended up doing that for us, which was absolutely incredible. We ended up then with a pitch meeting to the skincare category buyer, and I think from there we had like the momentum, but I really wouldn't undersell how hard it is to get like those meetings. So if there is, you know, if you're that person that you're struggling, just like keep pressing on and finding different ways to sort of get in the room.
And then once you get into a retailer like that, how are you just moving stock off the shelves? Because this is the other part of it, right? It's like once you're in there, they're not responsible necessarily for moving that stock. You are.
Yes.
What were you doing? Or what are you doing?
I think there's a common misconception that if you get a retail partner, it's like, great, it's on shelf, it will sell.
Yes.
And that isn't the case at all. And you can put yourself in an extremely stressful situation if you partner with a retailer and they buy the stock and it doesn't sell through. Because in the contracts, like you're probably liable to buy that stock back if it doesn't sell. And so you can end up putting yourself in a really stressful situation where you've got a retail partner who's like essentially relying on you to make sure that stock sells. For us, because we had the 3 years under our belt with e-com, and this is where I'm saying I'm very, very grateful for that. We'd been able to build a very loyal community on mainly organic social channels. But even just because we had this really clear purpose with the brand, I think it was like people really aligned to the brand emotionally. They were invested and they were really loyal supporters. So when we went into Priceline, it was our first retail partner and we entered into 400 stores.
Wow.
The stock flew because they really supported it. Not only that, I think because we saw it as such a monumental thing for our business, we just heroed it so much. And I think a lot of people feel like retail's a channel that if they're an e-com business, they've got to compete with. And that's, I think, the wrong way to see it. We really saw it as like a brand partner and a way to build the business together. And so our approach was like, scream it from the rooftops. Don't try and like compete with the channel, because everything you do has to have like that omni-channel approach. So when we went into Priceline, we found an ambassador to become the face of that campaign, someone who really believed in the brand, had used the products. That was Olivia Molly Rogers. She was already a Priceline ambassador, so very closely linked in with the Priceline brand. we shot like a beautiful campaign with her. She hosted like our event in Melbourne, like with media and influencers. So we created like a really beautiful launch moment that heroed the brand and really spoke to why it was Priceline.
Yes.
And I think that purpose of like, we're not just putting it on a shelf somewhere, like it was like really meaningful, that partnership. And I think that is really why the product flew.
I think that's just such a thing to talk about, and such an important thing to double click on, because it comes back to like everything that you do. Like come back to the why are you doing it, and then have that as the pillar of like all of the communication around every decision that you're doing in the business, because that's how you get people to buy in and support you.
Yes, yeah. And I think too often retail or wholesale business partnerships are seen as dollars. And what drives dollars is purpose.
Yes.
So if you lead with purpose and you stay true to the core of the, brand mission, and you align your retail partners that way and you hero the messaging that way, the dollars come later. But when you chase partnerships because you think that they're going to bring money, you end up, I think, in a more sticky situation where you find you're actually not aligned, or you're not in the right place and the customers aren't there. Like, think about your customer, think about why you're doing what you're doing.
You spoke about a big influencer partnership before. That sounds like it would have been a big investment, like a big campaign. Have you done more in the influencer space? What lessons do you have about like what's working, what you're like, that flopped, not doing that again? So people don't make that mistake and do the things that are working instead.
I really think it's about finding the influencers or creators that genuinely like are obsessed with your brand and your product. For us, we never worked with anyone unless they like had a result with the product. And if they didn't believe in it, it was like, okay, well, we don't want to work with you.
Yeah.
Again, when you're a small business, that could be so tricky, because you're like, I need $1 in the door. And so you're wanting to work with people fast, and it's like a quick hit, like you're chasing a quick hit. I think for us, we always looked at building long-term partnerships. So working with an influencer, and maybe, yes, okay, we work with them as like a one-off to see how their like audience responds and whether they love the product as much as we think that they will, or whether they like, relate to it, really well. Once that's tested though, we want to work with that, partnership. Like we want an ongoing partnership. So we like to build it across channels. Like maybe the influencers doing content for our own channels. Maybe they're doing a takeover. Maybe they're also posting on their page. Maybe they're attending an event. Maybe they're available for media interviews. And we almost integrate them as like a part of the team and the brand. And that's meaningful because I think they show up in a lot of different places and endorse the brand, and it builds a lot of trust. Whereas, you might have like, you pay someone for one story and you're expecting this big hit and it doesn't come.
How do you incentivize that kind of relationship that's longer term? Are they incentivized by like affiliate, and every time they mention, do you put people on like year-long contracts? How does that work?
We usually just opt for longer term contracts, so it's like 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
And we'll agree, sort of high level deliverables for that period of time and a fee, but then we're quite flexible. So it's like allowing also the creator to work the way that they want to and how they know best, because they know their channel and their audiences and everything. So it's actually better to give them the freedom to interpret the brief that they want to, and almost just say, look, we want to work with you. Here's like a year-long contract. Do it in your own way. This is sort of what we're looking for.
Yeah.
But I think people can be very prescriptive with it, and it actually takes the creativity and like the genuine sort of component out of it when you don't allow creators to just like operate in the way that works best for them.
Are you transparent with them about like, this is what we expect in terms of ROI, this is what we're hoping for, so that they get that ballpark? Or is that something that you don't want to put that pressure on them, you want them to be creative?
Yes, I wouldn't really ever push an ROI return on a creator.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about team building now, because you have mentioned all of these different pieces of the business, and I want to know who is doing all of this, and when did you start kind of bringing people in, and how?
Yes, it's a bit of a complicated story. Back probably, so when we started the business, it was just myself and mum, and then we had sort of like part-time people join the business, but I would say like our first proper hire would have been the end of 2021. So we had like a part-time marketing coordinator. We just moved into a co-working space with like a shared office and warehousing facility. And so that was really like step one of like having the first hire. And then we sort of stayed with part-time like marketing coordinator for, I would say, the next 12 months. And then when things started to pick up, it was like, okay, we were hiring more casuals to pack, but then there was like, we actually felt the need for like more senior, like advisory skill set as well. So we ended up hiring in like an advisory board with people that we already knew, but we just wanted in a more formal capacity to help us.
And you pay these people, or it's like they have a piece of the business?
They had a small piece of the business that was like sort of set up so that it was like based on milestones sort of thing. And we were really lucky to have amazing people that we were able to work with through that period of time. What ended up happening though was we ended up, when we were raising our next round of capital, we actually came into contact with another founder and they had a business called Boost Lab Serums. And what we could see was all of the skill sets, they were still a founder-led business as well, like, you know, founded in 2020, had a very small team. And so their skill sets were completely like opposite to ours. And we had like all of these really complementary sort of overlaps where it was like, okay, we could be doing this for your business, you could be doing this for ours. And it was like, hang on, we're actually wanting to build the same thing. Let's just build it together.
That's so interesting.
So when it came to team building, it was like we identified that through that conversation of we wanted to build the exact same in-house team. Let's just come in, join hands and like build everyone under the one roof. So we co-founded York Street Brands together, which now own TBH Skincare and Boost Lab. And everyone works across that. So I'm now CMO for Boost Lab and TBH. So I'm CMO for York Street. And everyone sort of took on their roles, which was really interesting. So when it comes to hiring a team, it was like when the minute I had team members, I was able to step into the role that really I was like very, very good at doing and focus on the things where, my value was there for the business rather than wearing 100 hats, which you do as a founder. So I think that was a really important part of team building, was finding out where the gaps are and filling them, not hiring like a replica of you.
Yes.
And so now when we joined and merged, we officially merged in March 2023. We had 8 people across like the entire business, and we now have 21.
Oh my goodness.
So it's been crazy. Yeah, crazy growth.
What's that like for you coming from, you know, it's you and your mum, and then now you're managing a big team and like your role would be so different.
So different.
Is it better? Is it worse? Is it harder? Is it easier?
I would say it's better, but probably it's harder.
Yeah.
So I am doing more of the stuff that I really enjoy, and I'm seeing so much more returns for my work because, like I said, I'm in the places where I can add the biggest amount of value.
Yeah.
And both of the businesses have thrived under that model. Like, it was so interesting seeing retail become such a big part of TBH Skincare's business, and e-com became a massive part of Boost Lab. So they actually did like a flip. But I would say the team building component, you know, like as a founder, you know, I was a young founder. I wouldn't say that I had a whole lot of management experience. And then you go through like building the business and doing everything yourself. And then you get thrown in a massive growth trajectory. And all of a sudden you become a manager of a team of 10 overnight, basically. And I don't think anyone could be well trained essentially to just shift like that, and also put on like more of a C-suite hat rather than a founder hat. Like it was very, very different. So I actually got an executive coach on board to coach me through that, and I still have that coach. And I basically would say that the reason I've been able to do that successfully and build the team successfully is because I've had him.
Is that a coach that anyone can like hire? Is it a recommendation? Is it someone that you can share?
So his name's Michael, and his business is Candor Coaching.
Okay.
So Sydney based,
Yep.
but yeah, he's really incredible.
Because there are so many business coaches out there and a lot of them are really shit. And so I just think you have to get a recommendation for someone who has actually been able to move their business forward based on that. Because it's an investment of like your time, and also it's expensive.
Oh, it is. And yeah, it's like, I think I've had 1-hour sessions every week for the last 6 months.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, it's intense.
Yeah, that is intense.
Yeah, and it requires a lot of personal work.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. What kind of stuff does he teach you?
I think it's just about getting, like the number one place was starting with like my own values and understanding who I was and how I wanted to lead more, and actually getting a clearer picture of like what that looked like, so that I knew like what values to lean into during that leadership experience, but also having really practical tools for how to empower the team, for how to let go, for how to listen better, support people better, like understand people better. Like I think the main thing would be learning how to communicate effectively in order to understand other people that you work with better.
Yeah. What are some of those tools that, like, what's something maybe a little bit specific that you've learned through that process?
Yeah, I think one of the key, like it's just a quick tip, like a practical tip is basically there's a quadrant and it's like ask and tell on one axis, and then like I think it's how and why on the other. And it's basically like if you are telling how or telling why, you're operating in the wrong side of the quadrant. You need to be asking how and asking why. And so I felt like I wasn't really operating in that side. So it was a massive shift for me to be like, actually, instead of going into meetings and being like, okay, guys, this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it, and I'm going to like excite you and tell you all about it. It was like, actually, what do you think we should be doing? Why is that? Like, you know, how are we going to get there? Because what you're essentially doing is letting people have autonomy over their work and make the decisions, and you can guide them in a certain direction, but you're giving them ownership and listening to them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And you've also like brought these people into your ecosystem and into your team because you value their expertise.
100%.
And so it's like let them use that expertise.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think founders do struggle to do that because they've, you know, had such a like very close hold on so many areas of the business for so long. But I've really enjoyed stepping out of that. Yeah, it's been super rewarding.
Very cool. Okay, and I want to talk about funding again. So you mentioned that kind of smaller private friends and family round. A lot has shifted in the business since then. You're bigger, you've merged, all this stuff's happening. Have you continued to fundraise? What's kind of fueling the growth?
Yeah, so no, we're not continuing to fundraise at the moment because we were able to get the businesses to a really nice profitable position. So essentially the businesses are growing themselves at this stage. The number one like challenge though is obviously the stock and cash flow management. When it comes to growing a product-based business, you're having to invest so much in stock that essentially it's like this chicken and egg thing, because if you grow too fast, you don't have the stock, and that's the position that we were in all of last year, was we never had enough stock. We were air freighting out, like, you know, packaging constantly. Like there was all of these extra costs in the business that we could, like run with, but it's not where you want to be long-term to really drive the most amount of profit in the business possible. But you're like chasing down this growth that's just like there, which is an amazing problem to have. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, well now we want to like get the business into a nice healthy rhythm. So we want to invest in a lot of stock so that we've got safety stock there in order to grow. But hang on, now our cash is tied up in stock.
Yes.
So now the cash is in stock and it's not in growth. So it's like, it's that constant balance. And I think, you know, for us, if we do decide, okay, we want to aggressively chase down another opportunity, there could potentially be like a fundraise on the table for that, because it is that scenario of, well, sometimes you're going to have to invest in that growth ahead of the curve, and there's just no other way to do it than to raise. But yeah, it's interesting because now we're getting more into a place of, okay, well, what do we finance with debt? Because the business is in a healthy position where you've got POs coming in from retailers and whatever else, so you can actually fund the business pretty well with debt. And then, okay, where do we need to actually raise in order to chase down growth?
Who do you get to advise you on this kind of stuff? And because this is a very specific skill set, and you probably want people who have done it before, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, our CEO is incredible. So Craig, who is the CEO in York Street, he has exited like brands before and run other businesses. So I would say that he's our real guiding compass on things like that, and very talented when it comes to navigating us through that.
Amazing. Okay, the last thing I want to ask you, Rach, is for a recommendation. So anything that's been helping you as you've been up-leveling as a leader and as a founder, or just a very tactical thing in the business.
Yeah, so I would say my number one recommendation is a book. I read it at the start of, creating TBH, and it really focuses on how to create brands and businesses that are purpose-led, and how crafting that mission essentially like catapults you to success when you really really know your why, but it's a very practical book in terms of like each chapter has an exercise and it's like really easy to read.
Yes.
Like, so you're not going to be bogged down in like research and detail. Like it's so fast to read. It was really great. So it's called Cult Status by Tim Duggan, and I can't recommend it enough. And I'm about to reread it as well because I just feel like I need the refresh now moving forward. So I would say that book has like just been so beneficial for me. And then, the coach in terms of leadership has been really, really helpful. And I think just networking along the way and talking to people and getting fresh perspectives is always a good idea. But that book is gold.
Great recommendation. We'll put a link in the show notes. And on the networking piece, we also have a free group chat that anyone can come and join. It's all consumer-based business owners. So if you don't have a network directly around you, come and get one. It's going to cost you nothing.
Amazing.
Rach, thank you so much for coming on the Female Founder World pod. It's been so much fun chatting with you, and I am so impressed. I think what you're building is incredible.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Quick shout out to all of our Business Bestie subscribers. If you are loving this show and you are building a consumer, CPG or e-commerce business, or you're about to build one, this membership will give you access to the people, experiences, and the tools that you really need to build your dream business. Head to femalefounderworld.com/subscriber for more.